So good morning. Thanks everyone again for joining us. I'm Kerry Moles. I'm the Executive Director of Court-Appointed Special Advocates of New York City, CASA-NYC, which is one of a network of CASA programs in 27 counties in New York State. So I'm proud to represent the New York State CASA Association today. We are volunteer-based nonprofit organizations that advocate to ensure the safety and well-being of children and youth involved in child abuse and neglect proceedings in New York. CASA is appointed to the cases of children and youth in foster care by family court judges when they are concerned that a child in care is at risk of falling through the cracks of the system. Very often that includes cases of young adults who are aging out of the system without the resources and support and services that they need to be able to live independently and to avoid some of the negative outcomes that we often see are so common to young people aging out of care, including homelessness and unemployment and incarceration and many others. And our cases often also include many cases of young people who are aging out of care who have children of their own, because young people who've experienced foster care have very high rates of early pregnancy, and their children in turn are at very high risk of foster care placement. At CASA-NYC, a couple of years back, we were fortunate to have the support of our board and foundation supporters to be able to extend our services to youth transitioning from foster care up to the age of 25. And we did this so that we can continue working with them long after their discharge from foster care, because we recognize that after discharge from foster care, when all of the system supports suddenly go away, this is when young people are at the greatest risk, and they need our support at this time more than ever. But CASA-NYC only serves about 10% of the youth in New York City foster care. So unless a young person aging out of care happens to have been assigned to CASA-NYC, they are often completely on their own. And what we've seen time and time again is that even the best laid plans, even without a pandemic, often fall apart quickly. So the housing that their caseworker and attorney and judge thought was stable when they were discharged from foster care suddenly becomes unstable. The family member they were staying with kicks them out after a couple of months, or they lose their job and they can't pay the rent, or they don't get the grades they need to maintain their funding for college, so they get kicked out of their dorms. Sometimes they lose their childcare because their babysitter quits, so they can't go to work, so they lose their job. Or they lose their benefits, their public health benefits, or their public assistance, or their SNAP benefits because of some bureaucratic mistake. So I can give you dozens of examples off the top of my head about how youth who've been discharged from care suddenly become destabilized and in need of our support. During the pandemic, during this pandemic, almost every single one of the young adults we're working with has become unemployed. There are very few exceptions to that. And the moratorium on evictions from housing in New York State is literally saving their lives in many cases. So we do thank Governor Cuomo for that. So why wouldn't the governor also place a moratorium on evicting young people who are in foster care from their foster homes and the support systems that they need now more than ever? Which is not to say that many foster care agencies don't and won't continue to provide support to those young people. Many of them do, but the agencies are often also greatly impacted by this pandemic, and they're understaffed and they're under-resourced. And because the court closures, there's less oversight by the courts of what's going on with those agencies. So it can't be optional, and it needs to also be funded. So to illustrate this point, I would love to introduce two exceptional young women who we have had the pleasure of working with at CASA-NYC. One who will age out of foster care in a couple of weeks, Destiny Mora, and one who aged out about a year ago, Jeanette Rivera. They are both incredible advocates for themselves, and I want to be clear that in many ways, Jeanette and Destiny are in better situations than most of the young people who are aging out of the system. So they are generously and bravely sharing their experiences as a way of advocating for other young people in the foster care system in New York State who might not have the same supports that they have. So I would, with that, like to introduce Destiny Mora.